What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 2 of Conversations with Creators, where we explore all things content creation through the eyes of some of the best creators in the world. We created this live stream series at Happy Monday to really talk to all the talented people that we've come across in our journey, to share their stories in an effort to inspire, in an effort to just share information. And, at Happy Monday, over the course of the last few years, we've worked with and hired so many talented photographers and have traveled all over the world meeting some of these great creators. And the purpose of this is twofold. One is to really collect these people's stories and share them with you. And two, it's to stay in touch with the homies. While we're in quarantine, it's been really difficult to connect with everyone, to stay in touch, and this is a great way for us to do that. The format of today's show is going to be a little bit different. We're going to bring in a bunch of people to facilitate the conversation, to ask questions, and to really just share different perspectives. One of the first people I want to introduce is Moeez Mustafa, who is the co-founder of Happy Monday and my business partner. She's the other half that creates everything that we do. She's also my wife. Here she is. What's up, Moeez?
Hi.
What's going on?
Hey, just chilling in a separate room.
You doing your thing?
Doing my thing. I'm really excited about this series and today's chat. I've worked a lot with today's guest and we've become good friends. So I'm looking forward to asking him a few questions. I'm gonna hop off, but I will be back in a little bit.
Okay, great, perfect. So let's introduce our guest. So today we are speaking with Moeez Ali, who is a fashion photographer based out of London. Moeez and we met several fashion weeks ago, and we became friends immediately, probably because we're both brown, and he was the first person that I saw at Fashion Week who was brown running around with the camera, and I had to go up to him and be like, yo, who are you? Moeez started his career in the tech world. He created a fashion tech app, and then ended up being a world traveling photographer shooting fashion weeks all across the world. I don't think there's a market that he hasn't shot in. And he's been shooting campaigns with influencers and brands, creating some of the best content that I've seen. He's a good friend and an awesome creator. Ladies and gentlemen, Moeez Ali. What's up, Moeez?
Hi, thanks for that intro.
Of course. How's it going?
Not too bad, thanks. Just sitting at home all day, every day.
You're in London right now?
I am in London, yes.
How are things over there?
Not bad. I can't complain. I'm, comfortable. Got a roof over my head. Can't complain too much.
Absolutely, for sure. So Moeez, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. Like I mentioned earlier, you're one of the only brown people that I know that runs around creating some of the most fire content that I've seen. And I want to talk a little bit about your journey and how you started where you did and how you ended up being so incredibly, creating some imagery that's like really at the forefront of this fashion, in the forefront of the fashion space, and working with some of the best brands, some of the top celebrities and influencers. So tell us how you got started. Where did it all begin?
So I don't have any formal background or training in fashion or photography. It was never really an interest of mine. I actually studied sports engineering and design.
Cool.
Yeah, at university, yeah. And I graduated and I was working a bunch of different jobs and eventually found my way back to London, where I set up a fashion tech app with a friend of mine. And that's kind of how I got into fashion. That was probably back in 2015-ish, thereabouts. And it was then that I started to get more interested in fashion and content, imagery. And yeah, I one of the guys that we hired.
What was the app? Tell us a little bit about what the app was. What did it do?
It was called Comb, C-O-M-B. And basically it was, the easiest way to put it is that it was like Shazam, but for fashion. So, you could take a picture of something and it would find it for you, and then you could buy it through the app. And that was the basis of it, really. So we used a lot of street style imagery for content in the app.
Okay, dope. So that's kind of how you got your foot in the door in the fashion space.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how that all translated to you being, or you doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, I started to just kind of take pictures, just more out of curiosity because I found it interesting. And then I didn't have an Instagram at that point, but my old business partner, Liam, kind of forced me to get one. And so I got one and I started just posting some pictures, and I guess like a few influencers saw it and reached out to me, and I started doing shoots with loads of influencers. I would message a ton of them just to try and get practice. And that's kind of eventually how I got my name in front of brands. And yeah, it just kind of has snowballed from there. And it still feels like I'm new to this and like I'm just starting out.
So do you remember, so you didn't grow up with any formal training. When was the first time you picked up a camera? Do you remember that moment?
I mean, like a proper DSLR camera, it was probably back in around 2015. My mother has always been interested in photography, so she does claim that I get my eye from her. So I guess maybe subconsciously there was an interest there, but properly, no, not till about 2015.
Yeah, and then what was the first? What was the first thing you shot?
I was at a fashion week, London Fashion Week. I was helping one of the guys that we hired, just like pointing out people to shoot, and that was the first time he kind of like handed me a camera and was like, you know, help me out. There's a lot of people to shoot, and that's just I just ran around taking pictures. They were terrible pictures. I think I might have sent you some. So
I don't know. I only have great pictures that you've shared with us.
Yeah, I mean they were really bad pictures, but no, these aren't them. I mean, I like these ones.
This is some of Moeez's work, which is at fashion weeks, shooting street style, shooting backstage, shooting on the runway. Great. So that's kind of how you got started. That's so then you know, I know you when we first connected, you were shooting street style.
Yeah.
So what is street style? Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, it's quite literal in its meaning. It is style on the street. But in the context of fashion, or fashion weeks rather, it's the kind of the goings on outside of the shows. So the people that are coming and going into the shows, the editors, the influencers, models, all sorts of people. And it's basically documenting what they are wearing, their style. And people document it for all sorts of reasons. You know, you have people who are documenting it for trend purposes. You're people that are working with brands just to capture their brands. You have the paparazzi, which I am not one of those. I'm not a paparazzi. That's an insult to street style photographer. And yeah, that's basically it. So everybody's there doing a different thing. Or I would say the majority of us are there for publications or brands.
So basically a fashion show is going on and a bunch of photographers are standing outside the location of the show, and they're waiting for either influencers, models, or editors to walk in. And all these people are usually decked out in incredible outfits. And the photographers are just kind of stopping them and taking photos or catching them as they're moving in and out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a mix. Some photographers, yeah, they do. If anyone who's watching has been to Fashion Week, they know what the circus is like. You kind of get like a wall of photographers stopping people. There's nothing wrong with that kind of shot, because all brands need different things. But my preference is to try and get them on the go, candid. It's borderline creepy because you're just following them to get a shot and they don't always know you're taking it.
Well, hold on. So I know that, you know, on our side, Hume has extensively shot street style. So I'm going to bring her in to have this conversation with you. Hume,
Cool.
Let's go.
Hi, Moeez.
Hi, and hi to I see a lot of people saying hi, and I've never done this before, so I don't know if it's like proper to say hi back to you all, but hi.
It is. So, street style, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's where you and I really got to know each other in a
Yes.
special way. We spent a lot of time together on the streets during Fashion Week.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you were saying, we're talking a little bit about street style, and we connected years ago. I think the first time I shot street style was probably 2016, where Atif and I were in Europe, and we got a client who we were shooting street style project for. That was my first time, and it was terrifying. It was terrifying. There were so many people there. It was overwhelming. It was chaotic, and it took me a little bit to really understand how I fit into that. One of those people is you, who's like running around, zipping around, and it's really amazing to see you work. But with all those photographers, how do you manage to make sure your images are unique?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, because there's definitely the issue of kind of people's pictures starting to look the same. Not in a bad way. It's kind of hard not to look the same. So I personally, I have like a preference for the style, like the way that I shoot. I like to get close-ups, details, kind of movement shots. So for me, that's always been what I focused on. I mean, if you go on my Instagram, you'll not see that many static shots of people just standing still. And so I think that's kind of what made my photos a little bit more distinguishable. But I mean, everybody does a different thing, and yeah, everybody's got their own style.
Yeah, you've definitely found your aesthetic. I love it. I think it's beautiful and elevated. And
Thank you.
there was just a comment on the screen that said you're a legend. So
I mean, yeah, hi, Michaela, Liam, Monas, everybody. Thanks, guys.
So yeah, so street style. Yeah, you know, it's a public space. It's on the streets. It's really accessible by anybody, technically, who can find the location. For those aspiring street style photographers who are listening, if you had 3 tips, what would those tips be?
Be respectful of people around you, the other photographers, because got someone saying they can't hear the questions. Can everybody hear?
Yeah, it's in Instagram. People can't hear because Moeez is not on that screen. So so Moeez just asked Moeez, what are 3 tips that you have for street style photography?
Okay, so the question was, what are the tips that I have for street style photographers? I would say one of them is be respectful of people around you, because there's a lot of us there and everybody's there to do a job. But you know, nobody owns the street, but still, you know, be mindful of what's around you, because there's so many of us now. And then the other thing I would say is always take the shot. Like if you see a shot and you're even 10% on, you know, sure of it, and just take it anyways, because you'll regret it afterwards if you didn't take it. And I've been in that position a million times, where I then see someone else who got a similar shot and I just feel a lot of regret. So just, I'd say overshoot, take the shots, and then you never know what they might look like afterwards. You can fix things by cropping them. You know, there's so many ways to fix pictures that you think are bad. And the other thing would be is to just focus on your style. So focus on what you like to shoot. I like to shoot details, so that's what I do. I don't worry about like what other people are doing and what kind of shots they're getting. And you know, if I see people running to get a shot, if that person is not wearing something that I find interesting to shoot or that I think I need, then I won't shoot it. And you run the risk of missing a lot of shots if you don't have a focus in your mind when you go to take them.
Yeah, I've seen you in action, and I've seen you are thoughtful and you're mindful about kind of what you're going after and how you're getting it. So I think those are all really great tips. I would add that kind of knowing where the shots are going to be and kind of planning around that would also help. That's something that I do on my end is, public transportation, where are people coming, in and out of, where are they getting dropped off, like cabs, entry points, backstage door, like all of that. And then snacks. I think you should always have snacks. Nourishment.
So, May saying you should always have snacks, guys. So all the
eating
photographers
ice
out
cream
there always have snacks.
and apples. Okay, cool. Well, I think we're having some audio issues on my end, so that's it for me. I'm gonna let Atif hop back in.
Oh, thanks, May.
Moeez, we got a special guest here, your current roommate, the person that you've been quarantined with, and the person who handed you a camera for the first time to shoot street style. We're going to ask him about what that experience was and how shitty, in fact, your photos really were. Here we go. This is Mabdul, Moeez's roommate.
Hey, how you doing?
What's good, Mabdul? Tell us a little bit about how Moeez performed the first time you gave him a camera.
Honestly, probably the best photos he's ever taken to date, and I'm joking. But on a note, Moeez first shot a fashion show by accident. I had my spare camera. He literally wanted to shoot, took a couple photos, and I think that was the start to his career. So, do you want to speak about that, Moeez, or how that was for you?
Yeah, can everyone hear Mabdul? Or, I mean, no one can answer, but if you can't hear him, let us know.
I can hear you, so I'm assuming they can hear me.
Yes. How was that moment? It was literally a point and shoot thing. Okay, so Mabdul basically just asked me to describe the time that he gave me a camera for the first time, and that was outside of the Topshop show during London Fashion Week, and he basically gave me he had a spare camera on him. It was like I think it was like a Canon 60D with a 18 to 55 lens on it, like the stock lens that you get with the camera. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the buttons. Like, what do I do? And he might have put it on auto. I don't even know. And he just said, just point and shoot. So I was like, okay, that sounds easy. And I just ran around and pointed and shot at what I thought looked cool. And I think, yes, the pictures were not the best, but I enjoyed it. So that was like what really sparked my interest in fashion photography.
Sweet question. How must it been for you? Because of course, like first time you just jumped into it, like in a deep end shooting your first show, and you didn't have any prior experience. Whereas you're like, you know how Fashion Week is. There's loads of models, everyone running around, hundreds of photographers. So how was that for you first time? Because that must have been overwhelming. Because obviously for me, like I took stages to get to Fashion Week, whereas you just went like straight into the deep end.
So, okay, so for anyone who can't hear, Mabdul just asked me how was it to go straight into Fashion Week with no experience and understanding of what Fashion Week really was, and just being thrown into like a swarm of people and other photographers and not knowing the rules of the street. And it was really daunting. For those of you who have experienced street style fashion photography, you know what the crowd can be like. And it's a deep end straight away. There's no like, oh, you're new, you're a beginner, like, let me show you how it works. It's just like, get out of my way, and people shouting at you. So it's quite scary. So I can imagine for someone new, even in this day and age, it's probably even scarier because there's more of us now. There's probably like 50 to 60 photographers outside of a show.
Dope. That's awesome. Abdul, what is the worst part about living with Moeez?
Well, no one can hear this anyways.
Oh, can you hear me by the way, or is?
No, but I'll tell them.
Oh, okay. Whatever you don't say the right thing. Living with Moeez is interesting. Obviously, we're friends, and living with someone you get to know the real them. It's been a interesting experience, but I feel like most people well, officially like, yo, you and Moeez are friends. Don't live with each other. You hate each other. But for us, it's like we already hated each other, so you know, you don't have to worry about that problem.
All right, great. Thanks for hopping on, man. Appreciate your insight.
Thank you for having me.
For sure. All right, Moeez, let's get back into it. All right, we're back. So one of the things that I guess we realized is, you know, when we bring other people in, which is something I want to do more of, it's hard to get that to activate on Instagram. So we'll kind of work on figuring that part of it out. But so, you know, you started your career off as a street style photographer. And I remember having a conversation with you where you said that, you know, you're getting pigeonholed to being just a street style photographer when the breadth of your work and your abilities is much larger than that. So tell us a little bit about that and how you broke out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was, by the way, hopefully everyone can hear now, but how breaking out of street style is very, very difficult. I think I'm still stuck in it. And I don't say stuck in a bad way. I really enjoy it. But obviously, if I want to evolve and try new things, I have to get out of street style. And it was really, really tough, because when you go to a brand and you say, hey, I'd like to try something else with you guys, and then you show them your portfolio, it's all street style. So that's all they know you for. So the way that I got out of it was like I started doing BTS jobs on sets, like on lookbook shoots. And I would try to take my version of like a lookbook shot there or an editorial shot. And I slowly started to build it up from there. I reached out to some influencer friends, some brands that I knew that would be willing to let me try something. And I just tried different things and had to create a small body of work that I could then use and pitch to other brands. I think I'm still like struggling to get out of street style, but it's also quite a big industry. So I'm not going to complain too much if I can't get out of it.
You like it though. You like street style.
Yeah, I mean, I know it might sound lame, but I love it, like the rush of it. And when I'm shooting other stuff, like I just miss it. Even though when I'm doing it, it's 30 days of hell, basically. You know, you're traveling for 30 days straight. You're sleeping like 3 or 4 hours a night every night, and it's chaos. But I love every second of it.
So 30 days because you start in New York, then you go to London, then you go to Milan, and then Fashion Month ends in Paris, which is a 2-week-long ordeal in Paris alone.
Yeah.
So we're literally just like running around from show to show. Oftentimes have not eaten anything in between breaks. Oftentimes do not find a bathroom to go to in between shows. It's quite crazy. I remember when we were doing this that it really takes a toll on you. So what did you do to kind of stay sane?
You just have to remember to do the basics, really. Like it's good to have, you know, a couple of friends in the same space as you. Sorry, all your questions in the chat, guys, we'll definitely get to them, I think, towards the end. So keep them coming.
We're going to answer all chat questions at the end.
Yeah, so keep them coming. So yeah, how do I stay sane? I just remember, like, you forget to eat sometimes, and so just eat. I know it sounds like obvious, but you know, if I've had a few days where I'm so busy I forget to have a proper meal, and then I just have a terrible headache for like 3 days after that, and then it just messes with your whole schedule. And be organized, because if you don't have a proper workflow, then I don't think people realize how many pictures they take during Fashion Week. I take upwards of, I don't know, probably 70 to 80,000 photos in the month. So when you think of, you know, going through all of that, if you're not organized, it's just going to slow you down and make your job so much harder.
So your workflow is kind of, you wake up, you go to the first show. Are you editing photos right after each show, or do you wait till the end of the day?
No, I wait till the end of the day, because all the shows are, you know, back to back, one after the other. So there's no way that you can go home and edit. So, and it depends. Are you doing backstage? Are you doing street style? I do both, so it's really, really hectic. And then as soon as it's too dark to shoot outside, if I'm not doing any backstages in the evening, then I go home straight away and I just start editing. And before you know it, it's like 1 a.m. or something, and then you got to wake up again for the first show in the morning.
Do it all over again.
Do it all over again. Yep.
So you touched on a little bit earlier about how you broke out of just being known as a street style photographer and started to expand your portfolio and your work. What were the first steps into making that happen? Did you do work for free? I mean, you say it so easily that you had influencer friends that you just called up and did photos for, but like that's not everyone's situation. Not everyone is friends with influencers or has access to people like that. So what, how does working for free play into all of this?
So this is a very touchy subject, I know, and it's very polarizing. I think that, I mean, the fashion industry, in my opinion, is built off of free labor, to be honest. So everybody's done it at some point in their career. So for me, when I was just starting out, I would literally just message influencers on Instagram. That's how it started. There's no other thing to it. I would just message influencers on Instagram and be like, hey, I'm a new photographer. I'd love to shoot. And I do like the first one with them for free. And that's I don't think there's anything wrong with that when you're just starting out, because access in the industry is so hard to get. And there's so many photographers, so you have to create a body of work somehow. So that's what I did. I didn't do it a lot. Like definitely I'd shoot like a few influencers and I'd do the first shoot with them for free to just build up a little body of work, get in front of the brands they were working with. And then my network kind of just grew from there. It was definitely a lot of like grafting, and yeah.
Why did you say that it's a touchy subject? What did you mean by that?
Because I don't think working for free is good all the time, because there are a lot of people who still work for free now, even though they're experienced, and so that ruins it for a lot of us, because you're undercutting us in the industry. So if you're doing it for free, then brands don't want to pay. So when you go to the brand, they'll just be like, oh, we don't have a budget and we have someone who's willing to do it for free. And then you're just constantly starting, from, you've always, 1 foot back. And so I think you need to, once you've built up a good portfolio, you need to value your work more. And brands have the money. You just have to, be a bit more confident in it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I also think that there's no shame in working for free. I think that in the beginning, that's the only way to build your portfolio. That's how I got started as well. I mean, I think it's important to like the work that you're doing for free, right? Like to enjoy it and to feel like it's adding value to what it is that you're doing. At the end of the day, it's an exchange of value. It's not really for free, right? Like you're doing this act, or you're doing these jobs because it is benefiting you and your career. You're able to build a body of work. You're able to have something that you can show other people and be like, hey, listen, I do have a good eye. I am looking at things more interestingly, and it's a perspective that's not out there that I would like to share. And that is how you parlayed, those relationships into then, making money off of it. So I've never really looked down upon that, and I've never thought that to be a strange tactic to get started. Everyone I know has done work for free. I think the important thing is to just love the work that you're doing and to believe in what you're doing for free.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, like I said, there's a balance to be struck. I wouldn't say, I mean, I shot every influencer, like not every, but the first, I'd say 10 that I reached out to, I did one shoot with all of them for free. And then from there, once they were confident in my work, I started charging. And then, it just goes, I mean, I don't do anything for free now. That was just maybe in the first 6 months of me starting out. So I think just be smart about it and value your work. Don't be afraid of what other people are going to think. Because I'm sure there's a lot of photographers who probably talk about the fact that I've done that or other people have done that. And to be honest, I don't really care. So, and I think that's the attitude that people should have. Just do you.
But on the flip side, there is an interesting part of this conversation that keeps coming up amongst fashion photographers or street style photographers, which is the concept of getting credit or giving credit.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel really strongly about this. You want to share a little bit about your perspective? You're like an activist for people getting photos credited. Tell us a little bit about that and why it's important.
Because I mean, I get probably 99% of, not 99, but like 90% of my work through Instagram, and a lot of people do. So if you aren't properly credited, then the brand will not know it was you. People will not know it was you. And if you didn't pay me for the photo, and I know I saw somebody earlier in the chat ask a question about the issue of consent. And so the person might be like, well, I didn't consent to this picture, so you can't be upset about that. And it's yeah, so there's a lot of parts to this. But I just think it's common courtesy. Like, someone took your picture and sent it to you, you should credit them, because the people who are posting the pictures are influencers and brands. They know exactly what a right credit can do for somebody. And so I got one of my biggest jobs because an influencer who posted my picture, the brand was like, "Oh, we saw your work on her profile," and then
wow.
we clicked and we saw that it was you, and that's how we found you. So it's not a case of us just being like, running around. We have better things to do than chase people for credit. But I think photographers are definitely on the bottom end of the pole in that sense.
Do you think that you need to be credited even if you're getting paid for a job as well?
No, I think then it's an added bonus then. I mean, I get it in some cases, like a high-end brand or any big brand, it's part of the look and feel on Instagram and whatever platform they're publishing their work on, that it looks a bit strange to have someone's credit there, I think. But then on the flip side, you see if it's a big famous photographer, then they'll always credit them because brands want to be associated with that famous photographer. So there's levels to it. But no, if I've been paid for a job, then I don't expect the credit. And if I do get the credit, then it's just like a nice bonus to me.
Do you add that as something that's part of your contract? Like, do you say that Moeez needs to be credited on all social posts, or do you leave it up to them to decide?
I leave it up to them to decide. I know some people like insert that into the contracts and they make it non-negotiable, and I just think, I don't think it's always worth the hassle or like the argument of, you have to credit me, otherwise I'm not doing this job. Like, you're getting paid, you've got a job, you'll have that in your portfolio, and you can politely ask. But I don't think, personally, I'm not saying that's the right way, but I'm saying personally that's not what I would do. And some brands are nice. They ask you, hey, would you like to be credited? There's definitely jobs that I've done that I don't want my name anywhere near. So I don't want credit in that sense. But yeah, it's a mix.
That's interesting. We have it. We actually at Happy Monday, we have that as part of our contract. So it's part of the negotiation process. Like in the beginning, when we're discussing, taking on a job, we include that in our contract that Happy Monday needs to be tagged in all social posts, and that from there we start the negotiation. If the brand is like, hey, we can't really credit you, then there is a small fee that we charge for that. But yeah, if you're getting paid, I'm not really fussy about being credited. Let's take a question from the chat. On Instagram, there's a lot of people that are really engaged. I wanna give them some love as well. Here's a question from Tonya Mathieu.
Tonya, yeah.
If you could add one thing to street style photography business, what would it be?
Oh God, that's a good question. I don't think I can pinpoint one thing, but it would be something to do around pricing, because there's no. How do I price my jobs? Honestly, I pluck a number out of thin air. If a brandy brand is watching this, that's probably a terrible thing for me to have said. But like there's no reference, there's no scale, there's nothing for us to work from. So and a lot of photographers don't like to share that information, which I understand. I mean, I'm pretty open about it. If someone needs advice about it, feel free to ask me. But a lot of people don't like to share that information, and I get that. So
about what, like rates and how much they're charging?
Yeah, like how much they're charging, how much they're making, or they might kind of give you some advice, but yeah, it's something I always message my friends. I know my friend Abby is watching this, and I harass her all the time because she works as like she works with brands a lot. So I'm like, Abby, what should I charge this brand? And even she's just like, honestly, it depends on so many things. So yeah, so I would change something to do with that, like maybe there being some kind of more defined acceptable rate, because if I charge, you know, 200 pounds an hour, but then somebody else thinks the same job is worth 50 pounds an hour, you're massively devaluing it for me, but then maybe I'm way off the mark. I don't know. I have no idea, no way of knowing that.
Word. Yeah, I mean, it's you know, your rate is a really tricky thing. People ask me this all the time because, you know, in the beginning, you don't know what to charge. And my answer is always just figure out like how much your time is worth for the day and then charge people that. And that, again, people don't know how to answer that either. It's a difficult, you know, kind of conversation to navigate. But as you grow and as you become more polished and more embedded in the business, this is something that you figure out.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question we have, which was going to be my next question, which is, what gear do you use for fashion shoots? And, you know, like as photographers, as content creators, we get asked this a lot, right? Like, do people ask you this a lot?
Yeah, all the time.
Actually, when I was I want to share a little story, a little anecdote. When I was in high school, so for those of you who didn't know, I started studying photography when I was in high school. My photography teacher told me this story, and he said this photographer goes to one of his friends' houses for a dinner party, and that friend was a chef. And he arrives there. Everyone sits down around the table and are eating, and the food looks great. And at some point, someone asks the photographer, "Hey," or the host, the chef, actually asks the photographer, "Hey, what camera do you use to shoot your images?" And the photographer replies with, "You know what? This food is really delicious. I wonder what pots and pans you use to cook it."
Yeah, I've heard that.
I look at, you know, photography similarly. I'm like, it doesn't really matter what camera you're using. What really matters is what you're lifting your camera to shoot and what your perspective is. But people still want to know, what camera do you use, Moeez?
I started out with this. I can't even remember, to be honest. I think it was like a Canon 60D, and the very first pictures I took were with an 18-55 lens, which is like f5.6 or something. So it's like way off the mark from what I use now. And I mean, you can look, don't get me wrong, gear does make a bit of a difference in the sense of like, if you have a lens that is the aperture is 5.6, that's the lowest it goes, versus a 2.0, of course it's going to make a difference, but you work with that then. So, okay, you know your limitations with the gear, so make the shot work, figure out a way to make it work. And it's possible because I know that because I've done it I used that camera for 6 months. And that's how I started. But the gear that I use now, for the longest time, I was using a Canon 5D Mark III. I bought it secondhand. I would recommend that to everybody. Buy secondhand. Unless you have the money, then buy it new. But 5D Mark III, street style. I was shooting with an Canon 85mm 1.2 up until last season. I bought a 70-200, 2.8, and I have. Yes, yeah. You just need it for the way Fashion Week is now. And I bought a secondhand 1DX Mark I, which is a very beastly camera, but it's also very painful to run around with.
Yeah, it's huge and it's really heavy. You put a 70-100 on that, and basically you're at the gym.
Yeah, exactly. It's caused me like I tore like a tendon in my wrist a while ago because I was just shooting so much back to back. And yeah, and it's, you got to be careful as well. Like, know what you can physically carry.
Yeah. I mean, that's important. Why Canon? What's your allegiance to that brand?
Honestly, I have no idea. I was given a Canon by Mabdul, who was on the call earlier. That's what he had. and I didn't know anything about cameras. I didn't know anything about Canon or Nikon or any of that stuff. And that's what he had. And I started using Sigma lenses from there on the Canon body. And I liked it. And I was like, I got used to this. And I don't think that there's any, for me, they're both such high spec cameras that, you know, the differences are probably things that I myself wouldn't notice enough to make it worth it for me to switch to Nikon or Nikon.
Oh, Nikon, bro, come on. Ain't nobody using Nikon over here. We're gang all the way.
Yeah, so that's I don't have an allegiance to Canon for any particular reason, but I don't think I would change now. It doesn't make sense for me.
Okay. Oh, we got a question from Saul, who we interviewed last week. Saul asks, who is someone who is no longer alive that you would have wanted to shoot with, and why?
Oh God, that's a really tough one. Like as in a model or like a
anyone.
I mean, by the way, guys, I don't know that much about fashion still, so I would say just for his influence in the industry, probably somebody like Karl Lagerfeld. That might be really.
I knew you were going to say Karl, bro. I knew you were going to say Karl.
No,
Karl is great.
Honestly, I'm saying like mainly because I probably don't know enough. If someone's Ash has just suggested Muhammad Ali, so that again, I'm thinking fashion people, but yes, if we're going outside of that, somebody like Muhammad Ali would be pretty great.
Well, who's the photographer? Who did you shoot? Who have you shot that you loved shooting with?
In terms of like anybody or a model, or I haven't. I mean, a lot of the jobs that I do outside of Fashion Week are not with like famous people. You know, they're
you're around famous people all the time, no? Like in the fashion.
Yeah, but so I mean, in terms of like models that are really nice, like Gigi Hadid and Bella Hadid are like really nice people, given who they are and how famous they are, and they could easily be not nice people, but they are. And so I have enjoyed shooting them at shows whenever I've had the chance to. They're always very polite, very sweet. I shot Cardi B once backstage at Jeremy Scott.
She did?
She was so funny. She was so nice. And she was just like, yeah, cool, go for it. So I think honestly, most of the big models and stuff are really nice. There's a handful which are not so easy, but you know, they have a tough job too. Like they got a camera in their face all day, every day. So I can't imagine what that would be like.
Do you have any stories from backstage with some of these models?
I have a very funny story from my first ever Fashion Week in Berlin. That was my first Fashion Week. And I had no idea how backstage worked. And there was obviously you don't shoot when the models are changing. There happened to be a model who was changing, but I couldn't see the lower half of her because it was hidden by something. So it just looked like she was standing there. So I started to take a picture of her, and she was German, and she just came and like started shouting at me in German. And it was my first Fashion Week, and I just started freaking out, and like everybody was looking at me, and it was honestly horrifying.
Wish I was there.
No, I'm glad nobody I knew was there.
That's hilarious. Okay, cool. We have another question that I'd love to ask you. This is something we touched upon in the beginning of this live stream, and it has to do with, being brown. So Watch Guy 1234 on IG asks, curious how you navigate the intersection of coming from a conservative background, Pakistan, with fashion and modeling. I struggle with this.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and something that I've always wanted to ask other people as well and talk about. But as we said, there's not that many of us. By us, I mean brown, Desi, Asian people in the industry. I'm very, very lucky. By the way, both my parents are watching this, so I'm going to say this. I'm very, very lucky that my parents are very supportive of this career choice. They don't always get it, but they're very supportive.
Were they supportive from day one?
They were hesitant. They were a little bit hesitant because mainly as parents, they were just like, how are you going to make money? This is not an industry that anyone in our community is involved in, so we don't know anything about it. My father came from a very traditional background, so he's very business minded. So it was more a case of like, okay, show me the viability of this, and if you can, then why not? Their thing was, on the Pakistani thing, their thing was get a good degree, and then you can do whatever you want. In terms of navigating that, it's definitely tricky because when I don't work with that many Pakistani brands or Asian brands, not for any reason, but I feel like what I shoot and the way I shoot it is so different to the content that comes from that part of the world that I don't know how I would shoot it. I don't know if I could translate my style to that. So I definitely struggle with it in that sense. But in terms of the conservative background, I guess unfortunately I can't answer that too well because I'm very lucky that my parents have been supportive of what I've been doing.
Yeah, I feel similarly. It's having your parents' support is super important. But a lot of people often ask me, hey bro, like it's such a battle to convince my parents to allow me to do something creative. How do I navigate that conversation? And my response is always the same. My response is, yo, it is a battle. It is a battle to get your parents to be convinced that this is the path you should take. And would you go into any battle unprepared? Like you have to show your parents that this is the lane that you need to be in, that this is the path that you need to stick to. And you can't do that with just like an Instagram account with a few photos. You have to have relationships. You have to have a body of work under your belt. You have to have something to show for. You not only have to prove to them that this is something you should do, but first you have to prove to yourself. And you can't do that without having these accomplishments under your belt. And I feel like once you have these accomplishments and once you have something to show, it becomes a lot easier that battle becomes a lot easier because your parents are able to understand it. They're able to see the trajectory that your career can go in. So I really do recommend that. Like, don't go to your parents with the half-baked idea of like, hey, I want to be a photographer. Go to them with like a solid plan of like how you see this actually working out for you.
Sorry, I've just seen like a comment that I want to address on this.
Please do.
Annie's V. Don't you agree that we're keeping our whole culture small-minded? We are restricting tapping into bigger industries. I think that's a really good point, and I think that because traditionally, don't you agree we're keeping our culture small-minded? We are restricting tapping into bigger industries. And that's something that I think it's very personal to each person and their parents. So it's hard to kind of address that on a general level. It's not like a movement that we can start, like, against our parents or people, in that sense. So I just wanted to echo what Atif said about you. As with any parents, not just in our culture, you wouldn't go to your parents with no idea of what you want to do, and every parent's going to worry about you. So as long as you show that you can take care of yourself and prove it, and it might be a struggle. I'm not saying it won't be, but you have to, if you really want to do it, then you have to be prepared for that struggle.
Word. Agreed. So how do you think being brown has affected your career? Like, do you feel like you haven't gotten opportunities because of it, or how has it worked to your advantage?
Personally, I don't think I've ever felt being brown in the sense of like discrimination in the industry. I can't say that I felt that. The only time I notice it is like if I'm at a fashion show or like I literally look around and there's no other brown people there. I could count on one, maybe two hands, the number of brown people I know and see in the industry. And same thing with street style.
People.
Yeah. or looking around during street style. There's literally no other brown photographers there, and that's when I noticed it. But I've never felt discriminated against or felt like I didn't get a job because I'm brown. And I think that's not to say the problem doesn't exist. But I think that because there's not that many brown people, the chance to discriminate against them isn't there. But I don't know that it would exist. But I know it exists in other parts of representation in terms of diversity. So there's definitely a problem. But
things are changing. You do see that things are slowly shifting, and that you do see more diversity at shows. There are some brands that, kind of ignore that whole aspect of culture and current conversation. But in general, I would say over the past few seasons, we have seen a better lineup of models, more diversity in the people working there, and more diversity of creators.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're getting there. I just always hope that it's not for the wrong reasons. I hope it's not misguided and that brands are just doing it to tick a box. So they do it on a big stage and then you don't see diversity in other parts. Diversity for me is not just models and campaigns. It's also hiring. Who works for the brand? I always find it very interesting. I go into I'll do a shoot and they'll be like, please make sure you get diversity. And then everybody who works there is basic. I mean, I hate they're white basically. And then they're like saying, oh, make sure you capture diversity. And then to me, it's like, it raises a little bit of an alarm or a question. Like, are you doing it to tick a box, or are you doing it because you genuinely believe that those people are the other people are a good reflection of what's out there?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think at the end of the day, what brands cater to are their audiences. If your audiences is mainly white, people are going to cater to that. If you have a more diverse audience, they're going to cater to that. But there are some brands that are a lot more conscious of it and are making a positive effort towards changing things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ali is here. He was going to ask you about the brown question. Yo, Ali, what's up?
What's up? What's going on?
Ask your question. You're gonna have to ask another question. This is Ali. He's part of our team. He's traveled with us all over the world shooting fashion weeks. Moeez and him are friends. We brought Ali in to ask a quick question. So Ali, go. What's your question? We already did the brown. So
I had another question. Moeez, why aren't you? I got a little caught up. Why aren't you? Why aren't you creating LUTs and selling LUTs to other people who want your look? Why aren't you making that money?
So Ali's asking, Moeez has a very specific look to his photos. He's asking why Moeez doesn't create filters or presets that other photographers can use and have his look be easily applied to their photos.
I don't do that.
Moeez, you're on mute, bro. We can't hear you on the... Turn the mute off.
Oh,
there you go.
Okay. I don't do that just because I don't want other people to make their pictures look just like mine. I mean, why would anybody want that? That's like a famous artist painting an outline of a famous painting and being like, here, go color it in, like giving them the keys to it. I think you have to find your own aesthetic. And then, by the way, I'm not slating people who sell their presets. I think it's a very good business decision, but I'm not interested in making money that way. And I also, this might be controversial, but I think it's a little bit of a scam, because anyone who knows how to edit pictures knows that you can't apply one preset to 5 different pictures and it will all look the same. You still have to edit the picture. So I think it's a little bit questionable, but I don't judge anyone who does it that much.
All right, cool. Thanks, Ali. Thanks, baby. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I think that, it's, well, actually, how did you come up with your look? Like, we asked Saul this last week as well. that just like, you know, musicians, photographers spend time figuring out what their visual voice is. How did you come to what your style is and what your voice is?
I mean, honestly, I don't know what people think of my editing. Like, some people might think it's a lot, because a lot of people have said your pictures are very dark. Some people have said they're very high contrast. So, you know, and my goal was to just, and my goal always is to just make my pictures look as close to the reality of what I shot it in. So I don't like to make the sky, if it wasn't a clear day, if it wasn't a, you know, cloudy day, if it wasn't like clear skies, then I'm not going to try and make it look like it was, because the point of my pictures, I'd like it to be, is to make it feel like you were there. And I think that minimal kind of editing, maybe, you know, you make some colors pop a bit, you might have to color correct a few things, but other than that, I just,
you're very true to the experience of being there and capturing what, you know, making sure that your image looked like what you felt like you captured.
Yeah, and I just, if it's raining, I like the rain to show. You know, some people think it makes pictures look ugly. You know, if there's something in the shot that like is in the background, like, I don't care. I just want it to look exactly as how I shot it.
Word. Dope. All right, so we have like 4 minutes left. Do you have advice for other photographers that are trying to step into the game? Like, would you even recommend that anyone step into the street style game at this point and where the industry is?
It's a really tough one. I think if you want to get into it, you know, you should. But like we said earlier, don't go into something half-baked, especially in an industry like this, or any. You wouldn't go into any freelance, self-employed job without the proper motivation, and that applies to any industry. So I would only recommend doing it if you are willing to work harder than you've ever worked before, and you absolutely love what you do. I kind of found my way into that slightly differently, because I didn't know what I was doing, but then I grew to love it, and that's how I got into it. But one thing I will say is, like, if you're not willing to work hard, then don't do it. Like Fashion Week, you can't just turn up at Fashion Week, shoot a couple of shows, and expect things to go well. You have to, yeah, you have to really, I hate to use this phrase, but like, hustle, grind, all that stuff, those IG hashtags, all of that, you got to do it.
I agree, man. Like, I think that there's room for every industry for a new player to come in and add their perspective and add their visuals. I think that, like you said, you have to really care about what it is that you're doing. You can't just start shooting street style because you want to be around the fashion space or because you want to hang out with influencers or whatever it is. That shouldn't be the motive. The motive should be that you are really interested in capturing what it is that you're photographing. I think there's a lot of misguided intentions in the fashion space, especially because people just want to be part of the sexy atmosphere, the space, the
Fashion Week is not glamorous at all. Like, if you saw how we stood, how we run around like rats in the street, like, it's not glamorous at all. So sometimes I don't even want to show people the behind the scenes, because I'm like, this is like a terrible look, to be honest.
We ended on the Instagram feed, but we're gonna just log on real quick again just to get our last question off. There's one question that people keep asking in the chat that I'm gonna
wait. How do I think I went off your live.
Just kind of request again, and then you'll be back in there.
There's one question that people keep asking in the chat that I'm gonna just kind of request again, and then you'll be back in there.
Okay. All right, we got the last question with Moeez going on right now. As soon as he joins on Instagram, we'll go live. Okay, great. So Moeez, this is a question that keeps coming up in the chat. What's been the biggest mistake or fuck up during a shoot or a job that you've learned from? I like this question. I like two reasons. One, because it's trying to put you on blast. It's trying to put you on.
Well, we know who asked
it. So yeah, what is the biggest fuck up that you've had on a shoot, and what did you learn from it?
I've had several. I've been very, very lucky, touch wood, that I have not had a huge one. Probably, I'll give a couple just because, and just to give you a variety of the mistakes that I make. I once turned up to a shoot, and I knew that I had a faulty memory card in my camera, and I just thought I'd be fine, and I thought it would be okay, because I was lazy. I didn't go and buy a new one, and I thought I'll figure out a way to make it work, and I didn't. It didn't work out. A lot of the pictures were not available. They were corrupted files.
Oh no, really?
Yeah. And I just had to be upfront with the brand and say, I'm sorry, I messed this up. And luckily I've worked with that brand again since.
So they were forgiving of it. How were they forgiving of the fact that you didn't have any images from the shoot?
I had some, I just didn't have a lot. And I'm very lucky that the ones that I got were good enough to serve the purpose of the shoot.
Yeah.
Another mistake I've made is something I used to do in my early days was I would say yes to any job, even if I didn't know how to do it, just because I wanted the job and I needed the exposure and the money and all that. And I said a yes to a job where they said, you're going to need lighting and you're going to need a lighting setup. And I was like, yeah, that's, I mean, how hard can that be? And lighting is not easy. You have to know a lot about it. And so I turned up to the shoot with like these two dinky lights, and it was a full lookbook shoot. It was in my early days as well, when I was just starting out my first year. And I never shot a lookbook for that brand again, because obviously the lighting was not great. And I really messed up the pictures. So I learned then that if you're going to say yes to a job, even if you don't know how to do it, make sure you research beforehand. And that was definitely
I think in the beginning of my career, I used to take that approach a lot. I used to be asked to do things that when I was briefed on like, hey, this is what the job is, I'd be like, I have no idea how to actually do that. But I would be like, yeah, sure, I got this. We'll make it happen. Let me know when. And then I would, I wouldn't show up not knowing how to do it. I would obviously do my research, call my friends who've done it before, make sure that I know what I'm doing, practice, test it, and all that. But a lot of how I learned how I do what I do today has been through saying yes and taking the risk, but then going in and researching, doing the work, doing the tests, making sure that I know what I'm doing.
And finding people that can help you. Sometimes you can't learn everything from Google and stuff. You need somebody who's actually experienced in lighting. So that's what I did. I found somebody who was good at lighting, and he's in the middle of teaching me how it works. So that next time I'm in that position, well, hopefully I won't be in that position again. But I can just learn about it. And I think mistakes are fine. It happens. I've had friends do even worse things. You need to be upfront about them and own up to them and be honest about them, because I think it looks worse if you try and talk your way out of it with some excuse.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't pretend like you didn't fuck up. Like I have always owned up to every mistake that I made, like as soon as I could. I've gone to the client and been like, hey, this happened. One time we were at Fashion Week, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but I was shooting from the pit, and then I had someone else, Chris. I hope he's watching right now. Chris was shooting from the side, and Chris was swapping camera lenses between.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah.
And he swapped a lens, and then he put the other lens on the floor, and then he went to take a step to shoot. This is during the Naeem Khan show at New York Fashion Week. He takes a step to take the photo, and his step kicked the lens onto the runway in the middle of the show while it was happening. Security came in and grabbed the lens, and everything went on. But immediately after that happened, I went to the person who hired me, and I was like, yo, this happened. I just want you to know before you hear it from somebody else, it was a fuck up, and I take full responsibility for it, and I'm sorry. That
was horrifying, that moment.
That was horrifying, bro. I was
in the pit too, so I just saw something fly across onto the runway.
Yeah. That was a moment I remember. Okay.
Yeah, admitting.
Yeah, you gotta be upfront. You gotta be upfront.
I
Is
know we
anything
gotta
else
wrap it
you
up,
wanna
but
share before we
I just want to say if anyone's got any questions that we didn't answer, like feel free to DM me, and I will get back to you.
Yeah, please follow Moeez. His information is on the bottom, scrolling across. That's Moeez on Instagram. Moeez, do you have a website?
No.
Moeez does not have a website. Moeez has made the critical mistake that I tell every creator not to make is don't just have an Instagram account. But luckily his work is so strong that it can stand on,
I've lost jobs for not having a website, so I need I lost possibly one of the biggest jobs in my career for not having a website. So
there you go, guys. Now you know.
I still don't have one, so I haven't learned. So hopefully I'll get it done.
Your work is very well displayed on your feed. Lots of people in the Instagram chat have kept on saying that your feed is beautiful. It's great. The way that you curate it is great. But yeah, we're gonna wrap this up because we've gone over an hour. Is there anything else you want to share, Moeez, before we kind of bring Humaid back and say our goodbyes?
No, I mean, thanks guys for having me. Everybody who's watching on my end, make sure you check out Happy Monday as well, because they create amazing content at Fashion Week and all over the world. Thanks everyone for watching and for all the questions. And like I said, just DM me afterwards if I didn't answer any of the questions.
Yeah, for sure. I think next time we do this, we're gonna create a Zoom room that everyone can go in afterwards and just kind of freestyle and ask questions and do the thing. But today we'll kind of just end it here. I know it's late on your end. It's like 10:06 there, yeah?
Yeah, got a lot of plans tomorrow, so.
Thank you so much, bros, for coming on and sharing your insights and letting the people know like everything that it takes to really like get to where you're at. I hope that after all this is over, we'll see each other again in London and, do the thing, do what we do.
So. All right, guys, take care.
All right,
All right,
bye.
bye. All right, that was great. Thanks so much for tuning in, for asking questions, for rocking out with us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Instagram. We will be doing this as often and as frequently as we can. Please let us know who we should interview next. If you have a creator that you would like to come on the show, hit us with that info and we'll make it happen. But for now, that's all. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.